Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if telling someone how to do something is always better than just showing them? Well, this new study dives deep into just that, looking at how we learn and how it affects our ability to handle tricky situations. Think about learning a new dance move or following a recipe. Sometimes it is a spoken instruction, sometimes it is a video or a diagram. This research asks if the way we get instructions changes how well we can handle conflicts when tasks get complicated. It turns out, the way we communicate new tasks can have a surprisingly big impact on our brains and how we solve problems. Humans are amazing at learning new things from instructions. We can pick up new skills really fast, much faster than trial and error. For a long time, scientists have studied this, mostly assuming that these instructions come through language. But what about instructions given through pictures, gestures, or symbols? That is where this study really shines a light. They wanted to know if learning from words versus learning from images leads to different results, especially when things get a bit confusing. They looked at something called the instruction-based congruency effect, or IBC. Imagine you are told to press the left button when you see the color red, but then suddenly you have to press the right button when you see red. That conflict, that push and pull between what you just learned and what you are now supposed to do, is the IBC effect. It usually makes you slower and more likely to make mistakes. The big question was whether this effect changes depending on whether the instructions you first received were words or pictures. The researchers pointed out that while language is a powerful learning tool, we also learn a lot from nonverbal cues like traffic signs or assembly manuals. They hypothesized that verbal instructions might actually help us resolve conflict better than nonverbal ones. This is because language might help us focus our attention and process information more abstractly, which can be super useful when things get complicated. So, how did they test this? They created a clever experiment with 3 groups of participants. One group learned tasks using words, another group learned using pictures of objects, and a third group learned using a mix of words and pictures. They all learned a set of rules. Then, during the experiment, they were sometimes shown things that aligned with what they learned, congruent trials, and sometimes things that conflicted with what they learned, incongruent trials. They measured how quickly and accurately people responded. They had 192 students participate in total, split across these 3 learning conditions. Think of it like this. In one condition, you see the word apple and are told to press left. Later, you see a red apple and need to press left. That is congruent. But what if you learn apple means press left, and then you see a blue apple and are told to press right? That is incongruent, and that is where the conflict happens. They were really careful to make sure the words and pictures meant the same things, so the comparison was fair. Participants learned new rules like if you see X, press left, or if you see Y, press right. Then, in the main part of the experiment, they had to follow these learned rules while also paying attention to a different, fixed rule. This is where the conflict comes in. They looked at response times, how fast people reacted, and accuracy, how often they got it right. Now, crunching all this data involved some fancy statistics. They used something called generalized linear mixed models, which is a way to analyze data that accounts for individual differences between people and the fact that people respond multiple times. They also used Bayesian statistics to figure out how strong the evidence was for their findings. Don't worry too much about the numbers. The story is in what they found. And here is where it gets really interesting. When it came to handling conflict in the main part of the experiment, the congruency phase, they found a significant difference based on how people learned the rules. In the group that learned with pictures only, called the pictorial condition, they saw a clear instruction-based congruency effect. This means they were slower and made more mistakes when the new situation conflicted with the picture instruction they learned. It's like their brain was stuck between the old rule and the new one. However, in the group that learned with words, the verbal condition, this conflict effect was almost gone. People were just as fast and accurate whether the new situation matched their word instruction or conflicted with it. It is like the verbal instruction helped their brain switch gears more smoothly and ignore the old rule. And what about the mixed group, where they learned with both words and pictures? The results were similar to the verbal group, suggesting that the verbal component was key in reducing the conflict. This is a really important finding because it suggests that language plays a special role in helping us manage conflicting information. So, why does this happen? The researchers suggest a couple of big ideas. First, verbal instructions might give our brains a top-down boost. Language, they propose, helps ground sensory information into our action systems. When you hear a word, it might directly influence how you prepare to act, making it easier to adjust when things change. Second, verbal instructions might affect our perception even earlier. It is possible that hearing a word primes your brain to process certain visual information more effectively. So when a conflicting cue appears, your brain doesn't get as stuck. It's like the words help your brain anticipate and prepare for different scenarios, making you more flexible. They also touched on the idea that language is a uniquely human tool for cognitive control. It helps us regulate our thoughts and actions, especially when we need to overcome automatic responses. This is why verbal instructions seem to give us an edge in complex, conflict-heavy situations. What does this mean for us? Well, it challenges the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. While images are great for memory and can be easy to grasp initially, verbal instructions seem to offer a superior advantage when it comes to resolving cognitive conflict and adapting to new rules. This means that when you need to be flexible and manage multiple tasks or shifting demands, verbal instructions might actually be the more efficient way to learn and perform. Of course, every study has its limitations. They mainly looked at reaction times and accuracy in a lab setting. Real life is more complex. And while the findings are strong, future research could explore the exact brain mechanisms behind this verbal advantage and how it applies to even more diverse and complex real-world learning scenarios. This research is a fantastic example of how understanding the subtle differences in how we communicate and learn can unlock insights into our cognitive abilities. It really highlights the power of language in helping us navigate a complicated world. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more dives into the fascinating world of psychology. Until next time, stay curious.